Hi, Raja.
Hi, Serge. It's lovely to see you again after the pandemic.
Same here. Same
Yeah.
here. And so today we're going to be talking about making room for emotions.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Uh, in addition, developing a capacity for emotions by making more room for them in the body.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's a key point in the body.
Yeah. Yeah. The science of embodied emotions in affective neuroscience has shown in the last 20 years, that when emotions are blocked from the body, the brain's ability to process the situation in which the emotion arises, cognitively or emotionally or behaviorally, suffers quite a bit. I will talk more about the details of this research, ground the idea. So what we are doing in the integral somatic psychology approach, specifically in the practice of embodying emotions, is to make sure that as few places in the body as possible are blocking emotional involvement, emotional experience.
Mm-hmm. And so implicit in that is the notion that the experience of emotion is embodied.
Yeah, that is. We now know that emotion involves the entirety of the brain and body physiology.
Mm-hmm.
Not only emotion, but also cognition and behavior. All three experiences, primary psychological experiences, we work with in all therapy modalities to a greater, lesser extent. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what we know now is that it is emotion that is driving, determining cognition and behavior in every moment. These are all revolutionary scientific findings in the last 20 to 25 years. So that is why, in my approach, I focus on emotion, because it drives cognition and behavior in every moment. And as we know, unregulated emotions can lead to unregulated cognitions and behaviors, crimes of passion and conspiracy theories, for example. Therefore, we are focused on not only emotion, but also in regulating the emotion at the same time, so that cognitions and behaviors are also more as optimal as possible.
Yeah.
Now, the entirety of the brain and body physiology is involved in emotion. Yeah, the emotion can originate in the brain or the body in different ways. I talk about these things in my book, but ultimately, it involves the whole body. What is an emotion? A simple way to look at emotion is to understand it as the impact something has on our well-being. If a situation is favorable to us, we feel pleasant emotional experiences. Starting with we feel good, we feel satisfied, we feel happy, we feel thrilled, we're ecstatic, and so on. We love it. When the situation is unfavorable to us, it affects our well-being. We suffer. And therefore we say we hate it, we don't like it, we feel bad about it, we detest it, we hate it.
So
right?
to interrupt you here, that
Yeah.
sense that emotion, instead of saying emotion is, oh, there's important stuff and there's emotion being dismissed, really emotion is like the executive summary of how we are with the world.
I think it is actually it's you hit the nail on the head. If you look at an emotion closely, it has meaning in it. It has an action tendency in it. I love you means that the meaning is I'm favorable to you, but I also have an action tendency to come toward you, to connect with you. And there's an experience of it, liking. a love, etc. So you're right. It is a summary. It is a summary. That's why now the physiology of cognition, emotion, and behavior have come to a point where they're saying that the physiology of emotion, cognition, behavior cannot be separated in the brain or the body. And so if you look at which is the summary? Is it the behavioral tendency that's a summary, or the evaluation the summary? No, the emotional experience that is implicit in it, meaning as well as action tendency, is a summary. I think that what did you say? Executive summary?
The executive summary of exactly. The response to the situation. So it happens in interaction. And in interaction, the whole organism is something emerges.
Right.
Exactly. Call it three different things. We can see the side of emotion, the side of cognition, or the side of behavior. But it's
an action. It's energy potential, if you will.
Yeah.
And an experience bundle, if you will. So exactly. And therefore it makes no sense to have an attitude toward emotion that is irrational. It's cognition that is rational, So it works because the three are inseparable. So if you work on one, it can change the other, right? We know that if you change meaning, you can change behavior and feeling. If you change behavior, it can change meaning and emotion, right? Now, the thing is, when the body is shut down, when the body is shut down, right? And it shuts down because we cannot tolerate the impact of what is happening to us. We know that in somatic psychology. Then, the ability to change emotion through cognition or behavior is reduced. And that is the reason why we want to develop a greater capacity of emotion, so the body remains open to the brain on the one hand, the environment on the other hand, so that the brain can actually process the situation much better, cognitively, emotionally, and behaviorally. So this is very exciting, actually. So
what you're talking about is essentially that there's a flow of life that manifests in many ways. And if you block the emotion, then the flow itself is interrupted in all directions.
Exactly. You're right. I mean, including spiritual connection. Mm-hmm. So when I shut down, right? The organism shuts down. It's shutting down not only to the brain, right? It's shutting down to the environment, which includes the human environment. Relationships suffer. It's shutting down to a larger energetic field, in which case our spirituality suffers, our energy suffers. So, yeah.
And so that's where it's important to make room for where it lives, which is in the body.
Rumi said this, no? He said, open all the windows, right? Mm-hmm. Light a lamp. That equate to awareness. Open all the doors and windows. That I equate to what? Opening the defenses in the body. Mm-hmm. The energetic defenses in the body, cognitive defenses in the body, maybe psychological defenses in the brain, so that the emotion, the wind, can come in and fully occupy it and be lit, made aware. I think the approach can be traced back to Rumi. So
right. Yeah. And so that's that point that what it is there are blocks that occur to protect us from the intensity.
Yeah. And these blocks can happen. Mainstream psychologists don't understand that physiological defenses are there even before psychological defenses come in. Mm-hmm. They can form in utero, in terms of constriction or energy inhibition, and they can happen especially early on when the brain is not mature, the body is not mature. The physiological and energetic defenses keep us alive.
So let's describe a little bit more for people who are less familiar with it. the
Yeah.
form that some of these energetic differences, physiological defenses can take.
Yeah, I'll give you an example, personal example. I nearly died when I was born, along with my 16-year-old mother. Yeah. And I came very close to cerebral palsy. And my legs, when you have experienced such perinatal stress, in order to handle that, my legs became spastic, and cerebral palsy, you have spasticity and then disorganization, right? They were so spastic, the legs were, there was hardly any energy in them. My energy has drawn to the core and it has gone up. So it was very mental, bright, extremely good at school in abstract subjects, but I was not good in dealing with emotions because they energized my body. They made me suffer. They triggered the old experiences. So I remained relatively disembodied and of energy in the body and of emotion in the body consequently. So I have had to do a lot of difficult work, body work, yoga, to make the physiological differences in the body more open. It's not just a matter of working with psychological defenses such as denial, etc., or have just empathy, which is very important for accessing emotion. But if the legs are not have been, spastic, or they've had adhesion for a long time, that requires very physical somatic work to open it up. Movement, or that I don't have to tell you that. The mainstream psychotherapists don't know that, right?
Yeah. But so what you're saying is essentially that lots of the language that we have in psychological language, like standing on your own two legs, is not just a metaphor, but it's actually an
absolutely
physical reality.
Yeah. Being grounded means having enough energy in the leg.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out when we have enough energy in the leg, we have more access to emotion. Mm-hmm. When we have more access to emotion and we can tolerate it more, the energy goes to the leg, more to the leg, automatically. These are the clinical phenomena we can observe.
Yeah. So you have a direct experience in your life of the difficulty of tolerating the emotion at a physiological level, and of the work done to reclaim that.
Exactly. I'll go one step further. Nobody can develop capacity to tolerate all possible emotions, throughout one's life. It's not possible because then emotions will lose their meaning, right? Emotions communicate to us the impact of the environment on us, from which we learn, with which we respond to the world. For example, I get hurt, that's the impact. I get angry, that's impact, but I can use the anger to mobilize myself to do something about it with the world. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and at no point in time, but my body is limited. My brain is limited. It will always be limited throughout my life in relation to the impact things have on me. I can have a bigger boat with which I can travel more peacefully in the turbulent ocean, or a smaller boat that rocks me around every day is a horrible day because the boat is not stable because it's not big enough. So having a greater capacity for emotions, or opposites, as Carl Jung would say, or Buddhists would say, is to have the bigger boat to travel the turbulent ocean of life. So that is where the equanimity comes from. The true equanimity comes from having a more spacious, well-keeled boat, so to speak.
Yeah. So that essentially stopping to think of equanimity as moral and almost disembodied, but thinking of it as building that bigger container where the emotions have room to be processed.
Right. In fact, when we repeatedly, I point out, when a person can tolerate an emotion in the body, they can be more mindful of it. The separation of subject and object, or I, the experiencer, and the experience is more possible when the experience is more tolerable in the body.
Mm-hmm.
It's also true, I can also separate in the observer the sense of self and the awareness, which is higher spiritual experience, when I have more capacity to tolerate emotions in the body, opposite emotions in the body. And that's why on the path of enlightenment, people say the first qualification you need to develop is the ability to tolerate the opposites in emotions, in your body, in life.
Yeah. And so essentially another way to state it is there's a sense of expansion from being lost in the emotion to developing more than that, the ability to watch the emotion, and then maybe the ability to watch the awareness.
Exactly. That watching the awareness itself is on a higher level. At least, it's like I'm in the ocean and my head is underwater, I'm freaking out. That's when I don't have the capacity of emotion.
Mm-hmm.
When I have the capacity of emotion, at least my head is above water. I'm still having a horrible experience, but I know that I'm having a horrible experience. I can at least observe myself as having the experience. Whereas under the water, I'm going to die. It's completely, I'm identified with the experience of the body that's dying. Mm.
Yeah.
Which can never die, as you know. So.
Yeah. And so that's why that work is making room.
Yeah, making room. And the question is, how do you go about making the room? Now, why is it important to make the room? And I think I want to come back to it and just give the listeners a couple of, studies, very quickly. At the University of Wisconsin-Madison, there's a great psychology department. There's a wonderful, scientist named Paula Niedenthal, and she has an emotions laboratory. And what they did there was this is one of the many studies in the paradigm of embodied emotions. There are two groups of people. One group of people, they've both shown the same emotionally laden video clip. And one group they were both watching it, and their heads were wired up so that they could see how the brain is processing the situation, emotion, and so on in the video clip. One group was told to bite on a pen. And so that the facial muscles became, invariant. They cannot become involved in an experience. A part of the body needs to be able to, vary its state in order to participate in an experience, right? And so if I want to smile, I can't. I want to be sad, I can't. That's the idea. The other group was not given this free pen. And what they noticed was that this group that was inhibited, the group whose face was inhibited, its brain, they can see in the brain that it's not processing the emotion in the emotion centers, or it's not processing the associations, the cognitive situation of the emotion. And after the experiment, they were asked, they couldn't remember the situation or the emotion as well as the other group that was uninhibited, that was not inhibited from, allowing its face to be involved in the emotional experience. And they did a task 2 weeks later, the same results. So essentially, by blocking the emotional experience, by forming defenses in the body, right, by disallowing the body from being involved in the emotional experience, we really severely compromise the brain's ability to process the situation in which the emotion arises. Everything is beautiful. And similar experiments for the body. For example, we know that love and attraction are positive, like attraction emotions. So they're always accompanied by what? Some forward movement of posture in the body. Right? That kind of thing, energetically. So what they would do, they would put the person in the back position, aversive position, and have them process the attraction emotions in the brain, and the same thing. So from that, we understand that for the brain to process the situation, not just the emotion. Because the cognition and behavior are implicit in the emotion, right? You have to, involve the body in emotion. Make sure that it's involved, not blocked. And if you think about it, somatic psychology, the earlier somatic psychologies, even later somatic psychologies, they're so focused on the defenses against emotions in the body, armoring, undoing it, etc. So this modern scientific basis is actually giving a solid a priori scientific validity for the inclusion of the body in psychological modalities, all psychological modalities. We can say from this, that if you don't involve the body in some way in your psychological modality, be it cognitive behavioral therapy or Jungian psychology or psychoanalysis, and make sure that the body is not blocked from emotion, right? You're going to be practicing a level of psychology that's more suboptimal, in terms of treatment times and outcomes. It's really a disservice to the field of psychology not to include the body and the emotion in the body. So it goes beyond my modality. I'm going to be talking about this very topic a little later today. But, this is what I found in terms of doing research from a book. I knew that it worked. Yeah.
So I love these examples because they make very graphic. Then when we talk about emotional experience means embodied. And if you cannot process the experience in the body, that's not an experience. And then it has not happened.
Yeah. Now, when you say experience is embodied in the body, right, you're saying that. But that's not what most psychotherapists were taught. It was everything is embodied in the brain. The body is just an appendage that executes things. Yeah. That's what they know. So we have to explain it to them. These scientific findings drive home the point. Yeah. Really. Yeah, exactly. So,
yeah.
So that's how, I was, I learned that early on, that emotion involved the entirety of the brain and body physiology, thanks to Damasio, thanks to Candace Pert, and so on. So, and then I was thinking, why don't I, and I also learned about, defenses, different types of defenses. I talk about 7 categories of defenses in the book. Then I said, when these defenses really, they kind of compromising physiological flows that are important for self-regulation and well-being. So if you're trying to limit the emotional experience in the body by blocking it in so many different places, then it must be harder than when we actually allow it to be in more places at the same time. And that's how it turned out to be. In my own experience, it turned out to be. For example, if I had grief from abandonment, and that's stressing my heart area, and I'm going, and I'm told, stay with it till it transforms. And I focus my awareness on my heart where the grief is. I stay with it. It's not going, it doesn't transform. I just go away from it sooner or later. As opposed to when I say, let me allow the grief to expand to my lungs from the heart, or into my face, into my throat, maybe through a sound, then it becomes immediately more handleable, more tolerable. That's the beauty of it. And so
it's alive, and you have a connection to it.
Come again?
It's alive and you have a connection to it.
You have a connection to it. And we know from this practice of embodying emotions that the brain is processing it much better than it would if I just limited it to one place. Now, I also come from Eastern psychology, right? I mean, my approach includes Eastern psychology, quantum psychology, that the subtle body, a quantum level body, the energy of it is what stimulates all experiences in the gross body. The Western psychological model is about the gross body most of the time. The womb to tomb body, I call it, right? It's all about that, right? But in the Eastern psychology, we have another body. And it is that body that stimulates all experiences in the gross body. And the theory is that in every life, the subtle body of the soul takes on a new gross body to have specific experiences in order to transform itself, that it cannot do just being in the subtle body, the quantum body. So from that point of view, limiting the emotional experience to one place in the body is like limiting all the subtle body energy to one place in the body. You can imagine the extra stress that it will create in that area. Yeah. I'll give you an example, simple example, no? With pleasant emotion. A woman, a student, came to me and said, doctors cannot find out what's going on with my heart. I have a cardiovascular problem. Symptoms, they cannot diagnose it. Anytime anybody comes to me with cardiovascular problems, I say, please leave and go to a medical doctor and then come back to me after an evaluation, right? But she said, I've been through that, I'm disturbed. And because I knew that she was a very spiritually oriented woman, I just had this, question come up. Do you have a spiritual practice? And she said, yes. What is it? No, I said, do you have a spiritual practice that involves the heart? And she said, yes. What is it? Loving meditation, right? And tell me what it is. I tried to, for as long as possible, perhaps an hour or two, I try to generate love in my heart with memories of love, and I stay within my heart, right? I stay within my heart. I said, okay, there is the problem. Mm-hmm. So what is she doing? She's generating the emotion here, the energy here, but not allowing it to go throughout the body by focusing on it, because awareness, energy follows awareness, and experience follows energy, right? First principle of energy. So by doing that, she's actually stressing. This is what, Selye, the stress scientist, the father of stress, he's called, no? Hans Selye, he said, stress from good things. That if you subject your body to a lot of emotion that's good for a long time, it's also going to stress it. Here, she's creating a problem. No wonder the doctors could not figure out, because there's nothing wrong with the heart. When you scan it, etc., there's no valve problem or coronary artery problem. It just achieves stressing it in the moment, every day. And so I said, do this. Please don't meditate for 2 hours. I'm sure you have a lot of things to do. Do it for 30 minutes, 1 hour. But when you do that, expand your awareness as the energy of love arises here in the experience, to take it to as many places in the body as possible. And she stopped having that symptom. So that's a simple example of, creating more space for the emotion, to increase well-being and capacity for it. It's pleasant emotion,
So I want to share with you that in listening to you express this, I'm also paying attention to your body language. And so I was noticing how, you were talking about, her experience in meditating, and there's that contraction, that folding in.
Right.
Felt painful as you're describing it, because you feel the contrast between the heart wanting to expand and the body closing in.
Exactly.
So, it's like it wants to expand and you tighten it. And then how much relief there is when you allow it to expand.
Yeah, you're pointing to one of the ways in which we form defenses, through posture.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's the practice, really. It's about when clients come to us, they either come to us with the situation in which they're having a difficult time, right? A relationship situation, work situation, or friendship situation, or they just come to us and say, I feel lousy. I don't know why. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
Two possibilities. Help me. I have no idea what's going on. I'm miserable. I was happy last week. This week, I'm so miserable. I'm so unhappy. I don't know what's going on. Right? No insight into, no connection. Right? And so we might then go about finding out what is going on in their life to see whether we can make a connection, find stresses in their life that might contribute to this emotion, right? So the situation is the step one. Emotion is a reaction to a situation, whether it's conscious or unconscious, definitely. It could be that they're upset about what's going on in the Middle East right now, and they might not be aware that they are upset about it, so the second step is to find the emotion, right? If the emotion is there, then you just support it and expand it in the body. And we'll see how we can do that in a concrete way. And in a simple way. But supporting for emotion from the other is one of the most important ingredients of accessing emotion and staying with an emotion. We can do all kinds of things, fancy things with the body, a movement or touch or body work. But unless there is empathy and sympathy on the part of the friend or lover or caregiver or therapist, it's going to be very hard for us to come into a difficult emotion. It does not matter how old we are.
So we need that. Welcoming it, that welcoming it.
Yeah, welcoming it, understanding it, and knowing, allowing it to, learning that it can be throughout the body in a more tolerable way, not just here, just stay with it, etc., or try to operate on it cognitively, prematurely try to correct it.
So you mentioned Rumi before, and there is a Rumi poem about the guest house. Welcoming the guests, like the emotions as guests.
Right, exactly. Open, I think I'm just, guest house, they will stay as long as they need to, open all the doors and windows, light a lamp. This is what I remember from the guest house, that poem. That's what we're asking people to do, because science now says it agrees with Rumi, right? So the science of embodied emotions agrees with Rumi and how we need to be with emotions, So, the practice has 4 ingredients: the situation, emotion, and support for it, and working with the body and energy to expand it. We can form defenses against it on a physiological level, which is what the book is about. The energetic defenses we form at the level of the subtle body, which is not in the book. I refer to it in the last chapter, will be the subject of another book later on. Yeah. And so it's about expansion, regulation. But as we expanding and regulating the body or energy, so that we are opening the doors and the windows in Rumi's analogy, right? We need to continue to be mindful of the situation and the support we provide for the emotion. Otherwise, what will happen is that the body energy will get more regulated, and the person will be away from the situation and the regulation.
And so that's the message.
That if you don't continue to support the emotion, right, and the situation, the person will just regulate when we expand and regulate the body and energy, they'll just become more neutral. That is the risk. So we need to be mindful of that. So even though we say 4 steps, there are 4 ingredients. So like you're cooking something, like the 4 ingredients, you put more of one, less of the other, depending on the need of the situation. So, I'm just reading. I just worked with somebody in Zurich, a woman, and she's a body worker. She knows how to work with others' bodies, her body, etc. And I realized, and she has migraines. And what she wanted to work with was the following: migraines and difficulty in being close. Her husband said to her, "I would like to be closer to you." And she has 3 children with him. And she said, "I would like to be close too." She understands that. She has that much insight. But there's something holding her back. Right? So she's busy caring for children and caring for the household, and she realizes that there's an avoidance there. She would like to work with it. There's the migraine and there is this. And so we started to work with the difficulty in being close, right? The difficulty. She had very little access to differentiated emotions, such as sadness or anger, etc. So this is one of the things people ask. Therapists ask me, my clients don't have affect. They take an hour, a year of relationship to come at affect. I said, no, they came to you with affect. This is because we were taught that affect is limited to primary emotions or their combinations, right? When somebody comes to you and says they feel bad, that is a very emotional statement. Feeling bad is legitimate. So let's start expanding that. So that's what we did. It was like just, it's like a reluctance in the body that felt bad. Feeling bad. Where does it feel bad? Where else does it feel bad? Vocalize that. Because very often we repress everything by repressing facial and vocal expression. And we know from the experiment with the pen, that is a severe block to the brain's ability to process, be aware of what's going on emotionally and otherwise. So we did that. It was a study. The session was a study in how many differences can come in. Yeah, body differences can come in, cognitive differences can come in, philosophical differences can come in the way of emotion. So it was like it was a classic study in the different types of defenses. And we patiently noted them and continued to work with it. And I could sense there's another thing we can do in tracking the clients. This is another thing called interpersonal resonance. I would like to come back to it. We can track what's going on in the body empathically through our body. Through that, I knew that energy was going down. Right? As opposed to in migraine, there's a top heavy concentration of energy, headaches. No? Yeah. So I'm always trying to bring it down, out into the arms, into the legs. I was trying to do that by working with the different diaphragms in the body and so on. And that was happening. But, very little was happening as far as she was concerned. In fact, she was not even aware. She told me later, she was not aware of a lot of what is going on because she's not very psychologically insightful on top of it. And then she wrote to me, and I just got an email from her. I was looking at it this morning. She said, I have to tell you, something has changed. I feel so light, I feel so much lighter in the upper half of my body, which is fantastic for remission of a migraine symptom. She hasn't had one after the session, even though we pushed her into the most difficult emotions in her life, right? And she feels more grounded. And she wants to learn more about the method, and she wants to, get more sessions. Will she refer me to someone? That session was a hard session. In fact, after the session, I had difficulty bringing my energy down. How you resonate with someone. Yep. But then when I hear that, I go, yes, this really works. This really works. And I'm so glad to be able to channel such a methodology that's so useful to people.
So what you're describing is an example in which the emotion was not visible. Many therapists would have said there's no emotion, not just her. You knew, of course, that there is no emotion when somebody feels bad. It's there.
There's emotion, right there.
And through that resonance tracking, to be in the presence of emotion, to be in the presence of energy, by sensing it into her, sensing it into yourself. And so there was a process, energy. And the process was not just occurring in her body, but it was occurring also in you and in the space between and the whole space.
Right. So it's the emotion, the experience is interactive. What Tabartian would call primary intersubjectivity. except that I don't think that he ever thought about it this way.
Yeah.
Being so mental. And the secondary intersubjectivity involves the environment, not just the therapist and client or mother and child, but the whole environment. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
So as we're coming to the end, I want to check if there's something else you might want to add.
Let's see. There are a couple of things, no? I would like to invite the listeners to use. One, people sometimes have very low affect tolerance, right? Very low capacity to tolerate emotions for whatever reason, they brought up in an environment in which there was low affect tolerance, or their physiology is quite dysregulated from trauma. Yeah. In either case, we find this especially with people who form psychophysiological symptoms. There's a combination of low affect tolerance and high physiological dysregulation, right? You find it in complex trauma. You find it in psychophysiological symptoms. You find it in borderline states, right? Then these 4 steps of emotional embodiment: situation, emotion, its expansion, and integration. There's an integration state that I forgot to talk about, which is noticing how the body and energy are more regulated after developing a capacity for an emotion. Yeah. For example, if I expand the grief from the chest to the heart to the lungs, then I find the whole area, its ability to breathe more automatically, because there's not a constriction here against emotion in the heart, it opens up. So noticing that is integration. Yeah. And as this opens up, the energy also goes down. That kind of integration. We also notice that it makes the experience more tolerable, but doing too much of that actually can become a defense, right? So it can be done 7 steps, 7 easy steps. And it is on my website. If you go to the blog section of my website, integralsomaticspsychology.com, I think the second recent blog is the 7-step protocol for embodying emotions. And what it is that there's a situation that is step 0, and then you find an emotion in it. That's step 1. Let's say you feel lousy about what's going on in the Middle East right now, and you can't do anything about it. You can, contribute and so on. But over and above that, or advocate politically, and all those things you can do. But over and above that, how do you deal with the stress of it? So I feel very bad about it. You can go. So that's the emotion. That's step 1. Step 2 is to find it in one place in the body. Step 2. Let's say it's in the chest. I feel bad. Okay. There you expand it a little bit by expanding the awareness, not to focus the awareness on where the stress is, but beyond the stress, and maybe even vocalizing it a bit to help it to expand. And then that's step 2. Immediately look for the stress in another part of the body, maybe belly.
Let me stop you just for a moment in the step 2. So you localize the emotion and so
expand it a bit, just a little bit.
So
locally.
If the emotion itself is a collapse, so I think that maybe like the vocalizing might be a nice way to expand the collapse.
Yeah. No, not expanding the collapse.
Expanding the emotion, the experience.
No, the collapse feels that the collapse feels bad. That's the emotion, not the collapse. Collapse is a behavior.
Okay.
In the collapse, it doesn't feel good to collapse. That's the feeling. Go for the feeling.
So
not expand the collapse. Exactly.
yeah, right. So what the vocalizing does is give an expression to how bad it feels to be collapsing.
Yeah, exactly. It has to match that. It can't be om or something else that changes it. So,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And but you don't have to do that. You can just expand your awareness to more of the chest where the bad feeling is, and that might be sufficient for the bad feeling to expand. Awareness expands, energy expands, and emotion expands too. That's the idea. If it doesn't, then you can put your hand there. That's the second tool to help it, not to make it go away, to feel it. The third tool will be vocalizing it.
Mhm.
So then you do it not for too long, because it's like you're walking on fire in a very unstable system. You don't want to stay for too long to burn your feet. Look for it in another. Step 3, you look for it in another place, right? Belly or face or throat, wherever, right? You can put one hand here where it is, expand your awareness to the chest, and connect that, entrainment is the idea. Connect that bad feeling in the chest to your abdomen. You can put your hand there, expand your awareness to the belly, and then vocalize it. And, it might be the chest, it might be the arms, we don't know where, but that's a good bet.
I want to add that the logic of it is what we talked about, is the emotion is something that's a whole response. So that naturally it tends to be everywhere. And so if it's
could be,
we're not noticing it. Yeah. Or that
exactly. If you don't do that, we are trying to lift a whole bag with just one arm, not 2 arms.
Right.
Yeah. So local expansion in another place,
Yeah.
And there are also, the 7-step protocol. On my website, under books, there are digital resources. There is a 7-step video on working with grief. And working with grief in 7 steps. So I'm just giving people more options to follow up to this podcast. No? And the third step, then you don't want to stay in that place for too long. In the 4th step, you orient yourself to look for what I call integration. What is orientation? Integration. Integration is improvement in breath. 4 things, specific things, because people don't have the time to, if you ask them, what do you feel in the body? You have to tell them what to feel theoretically. Look for what you can expect theoretically. Improvement in breath is guaranteed. If you do that in 2 places, more capacity. Energy expansion is guaranteed in 1 or 2 places. Or muscle tension reduction is guaranteed in 1 or 2 places. You're looking for these 3 things. So look for where your breathing is better, or muscle is less tense, muscular tension is less, or energy is expanded in a good way, a little bit. So three things, you have them look for it. That's 4th step, looking for it. 5th step is actually finding it. So they say, oh, my breathing is a little better. So, okay, stay with it a little bit. The ease of breathing. Yeah, the emotion is there, let it be in the background. Then they open it up. Not for too long. And they say, where else do you notice integration? That is expansion of energy, reduction of muscular tension, or improvement in breath. And they might say, there's more energy in my legs. Okay, let's focus on that a little bit. That is step 6, right? In step 7, we go for global integration. We say, sense the whole body. Here, again, noticing how the whole body is breathing better, more energized, or more balanced in energy, or less tense, not locally. And you might even notice how it might be connecting to the energy outside. You can expect that, right? When the body opens, it connects to the archetypal resources. And that's a simple step. And it's just remarkable, what it can do. And I wish I could, there had time to tell you, recent session I did. I'm going to post it, actually. It's so remarkable, I'm going to post it, and on the website. Because we have videos on the website under the book section, under digital resources, of my working with myself with the 4 steps, my working with somebody else's fear of dying, my working with a woman with 7-step protocol with grief, and so on. So you can go to book digital resources section, And also you can read about this protocol in the thing, in the blog section. The other thing I would like to share before I leave, because I have another presentation in the 5 or 10 minutes, is that I did a one-day workshop, online workshop for Ukrainians, civilians and military, right? Where I taught them strategies for regulate in war. The physiology is overwhelmed. How do you regulate it quickly? Through the body, through the energy, right? Through energy, through the body. That's one part of it. Of course, people are distraught emotionally. How do you regulate them emotionally through the 7 steps? Then I worked with a woman who cannot sleep because her husband and son are on the Eastern Front at risk. A wife who's working in the military, she's in a camp where they're training new soldiers, counseling them, but her husband is in the Southern Front. She cannot sleep either. So I worked with them. There are 2 demonstrations. And when the Middle East war broke out, I just felt compelled to just make this one day, I think it's a 5-hour video course, available for free. And if you want to, we're going to make it available. You need to register. It's a secure portal. We can't post it on YouTube or anything. It has to be secure, but you can watch it. And you can ask your friends and colleagues to access it so that you can work with people who have been traumatized by war, violence, or terrorism. Yeah, and you can apply it to yourself. And I will also send you a link to it, Serge. But you can go to my website. If you get on my newsletter, then you will be in the database, and you'll be sent an announcement early next week of how to access this course. And I want to just share that with you. So.
Great. Thanks, Raja. Thanks so much for sharing all of this.
Thank you, Serge. It's lovely to see you again.